This is the applied skills video for Module 9, focusing on understanding chains of cause and effect and the possible outcomes. Looking back at Module 7, we discussed the types of responses to any situation we might face during the project process, particularly requests from the other parties involved. We looked at accommodation and taking into consideration any changes to your project process that might be needed in order to make those accommodations. And we also looked at the idea of pushback and proposing an alternate path for the project process. We'll now look at these two types of responses together as the short-term trajectory consequences. So these are short-term trajectory consequences. These short-term consequences are evaluated with respect to just a small segment of project process and ask questions such as, where are the current circumstances driving this project? How bad or good are the outcomes that might arise? And how can or should we respond in order to maintain or restore the necessary aspects of the project process? In the upcoming modules, we'll look at much larger category of long-term trajectory consequences and evaluate them with respect to the entire project process. So these long-term trajectory consequences can be analyzed using the following approaches. First, looking at possible outcomes, which ask questions from early on in the project, such as, based on the general and specific aspects of this project, what bad or good outcomes might some of the possible long-term process sequences lead us to that might occur as a part of this project? And how can we avoid those bad ones or influence the situation to move towards the good ones? We might also approach analyzing long-term trajectory consequences in retrospect, asking questions from later in the project process, such as, by what sequence of events did we get to where we are now? And what were the different general and project-specific choices we could have made to lead us somewhere else? It is important to understand that by learning the above two long-term types in modules 9 and 10, we will have reached a qualitatively different form of analysis from the case study characteristics that we covered in modules 1 through 4. Analysis via long-term trajectory consequences that we're looking at sees the project process in terms of overall long-term intentionally linked sequences, chains of cause and effect based on what should or need to happen. An important difference between the forms of analysis and practice is in the way the analyses can be used. Analysis via case study characteristics for modules 1 through 4 is essential for professional judgment reasoning used as the facts of the situation. So defining those actual facts of what has happened. Analysis via long-term trajectory consequences that we're looking at now is essential for professional judgment reasoning, used to establish the bigger professional picture of why are we here and where are we going in terms of the project. It is the bigger professional picture of long-term trajectory consequences that gives direction to the proactive decision-making of project management, while always keeping in mind that wildcards can intervene and impact the project process in the form of specific circumstances and evolution of the case. For the most part, it is the chain of cause and effect and the long-term trajectory consequences that are used to describe and support your answers when professional judgment is needed to beg the question of, is this reasonable or was it reasonable? These are the focus of assignment 2. Regarding the applied skills for Module 9 and demonstrating them, the Module 9 discussion will focus on what the project looks like early in the project process using possible outcomes, types of long-term trajectory consequences analyses. Importantly, because the chain of cause and effect in long-term trajectory consequences can easily branch out into a vast number of possible potential outcomes, some of which include very bad situations, the most useful approach is to focus on 3 different types of scenarios. Those scenarios are, first, the primary intended good outcome. So where are we hoping this project ends up? Where is our intent to end up with this project that would be a successful project? Secondly, the larger subset of possible bad outcomes that may be likely to happen given normal human confusion and misunderstanding, but that typically do not lead to very bad outcomes. So these are the issues that are very likely to come up on a project that are less than ideal, that are bad for the project, but typically can be managed and don't lead to an overall failure of a project or a bad outcome. And finally, the third subset to look at would be the smaller subset of possible bad outcomes that might be unlikely to happen, but that would lead to very bad outcomes if not consciously avoided. So this is basically that worst case scenario for a project, which could happen if it's not managed effectively. So you'll be considering all three of these types of scenarios in your discussion post for this module.